The alarm sirens cut through the quiet morning shift at New Brisbane mining colony like a knife through flesh. Marcus Webb dropped his coffee mug and ran toward the control center, his boots clanging against the metal floors of the asteroid facility. Around him, 300 other miners and their families scrambled to understand what was happening. Unknown vessels dropping out of faster-than-light travel, the automated system announced in its calm, emotionless voice. Multiple contacts. Defense protocols activating. Marcus reached the control center just as the first explosions rocked the outer domes. Through the reinforced windows, he saw them clearly now. Ships. Dozens of sleek purple-hulled warships that hung in the black space like predators circling wounded prey. They were beautiful in a terrible way, all smooth curves and glowing engines. They were also firing on the mining colony without mercy. "Why aren't they talking to us?" someone shouted. "Where's the warning? Where's the damn negotiation?" There was no answer because there would be no negotiation. The Vax Collective had decided that this cluster of asteroids belonged to them now, and the humans squatting on their new territory were simply obstacles to be removed. Commander Zreth stood on the bridge of his flagship, the glorious Talon, and watched the bombardment with satisfaction. His scales gleamed under the bridge lights, the purple and black patterns marking him as high-caste Vax nobility. He had studied these humans before attacking. They were weak, soft. Their homeworld had only recently achieved faster-than-light travel, barely 200 years ago. They were children playing at being spacefaring civilization. "Commander, the humans are returning fire," his tactical officer reported, surprise clear in his voice. Zreth clicked his mandibles in amusement. "Let them waste their ammunition. Our shields can handle anything these primitives throw at us." But something in the way the humans fought gave him pause. They weren't panicking. They weren't surrendering. They were organizing. In less than 10 minutes, the mining colony had transformed its industrial equipment into weapons. Mining lasers became anti-ship batteries. Cargo haulers became kamikaze vessels loaded with explosives. Ore processing plants vented their furnaces toward incoming Vax troops, creating clouds of superheated gas that melted armor. "Clever insects," Zreth muttered, "but still insects." Inside New Brisbane, Marcus found himself in charge of dock defense through simple circumstance. He was the head of mining operations, which meant he knew every inch of the facility. Around him, miners grabbed whatever could be used as weapons: welding torches, explosive charges meant for asteroid cracking, even lengths of pipe and mining picks. "They're breaching Dock 7, a young woman named Sarah Chen reported. She was a systems engineer, barely 25, but her hands were steady as she pulled up security feeds. "2 squads, maybe 30 soldiers. Seal the connecting corridors," Marcus ordered. "Vent the atmosphere in the dock. But our equipment is already lost." "Do it." The Vax soldiers who breached Dock 7 expected resistance. They wore powered armor and carried plasma rifles that could melt through steel. What they didn't expect was for the entire dock to suddenly open to space. 30 soldiers tumbled into the void, their screams cut short by vacuum. Zreth watched his casualty reports climb and felt the first stirring of doubt. 3 hours into what should have been a simple planetary pacification, and he had lost 200 soldiers. The humans were using their own facility as a weapon, sacrificing their infrastructure to kill his troops. It was wasteful. It was inefficient. It was working. "Commander, perhaps we should withdraw and bombard from orbit," his second suggested carefully. "No," Zreth snapped. "We need the mining infrastructure intact. That is the entire point of this operation. Send in another wave. Overwhelm them with numbers." The second wave fared no better. The humans had rigged the entire facility with traps, corridors filled with superheated steam, airlocks that opened unexpectedly. Even the gravity generators had been weaponized, creating zones of crushing force that pulverized Vax soldiers in their armor. Marcus coordinated the defense from a makeshift command center, his face covered in soot and blood. They were buying time, though, for what he wasn't sure. Help wasn't coming. Earth was 6 weeks away at best. The nearest human military installation was 3 weeks. New Brisbane was alone. "We can't hold them forever," Sarah said quietly. She had taken command of the eastern sector after the previous commander was killed. Her uniform was torn, and she had a makeshift bandage around her left arm. "We're running out of ammunition. Running out of tricks. Then we make them pay for every meter," Marcus replied. His voice was flat, emotionless. He had seen his friends die today, his colleagues, People he had worked beside for 5 years. The grief would come later, if there was a later. Right now there was only survival. The battle raged for 3 days. 3 impossible days where 300 civilians held off a military force designed to conquer planets. The Vax couldn't understand it. These humans should have surrendered after the first hour. Instead, they fought with a ferocity that bordered on madness. They set themselves on fire to take down Vax soldiers. They detonated explosives in corridors they were standing in. They fought with broken bones and terrible wounds that should have incapacitated them. What are these creatures? Zareth's tactical officer whispered, staring at footage of a human woman who continued fighting even with a piece of shrapnel through her chest. She killed 3 Vax soldiers before finally collapsing. Deathworlders, someone else muttered. I heard their planet is classified as a Class 12 Deathworld, but I thought it was exaggerated. Zareth dismissed such talk. Deathworld classification meant nothing. Many species came from harsh planets. It didn't make them warriors. On the 3rd day, the Vax finally broke through the last defenses. Marcus found himself in the communications room with Sarah and 15 other survivors. They were out of ammunition, out of options. The door was melting under Vax plasma cutters. Can you get a message out? Marcus asked Sarah. She nodded, her fingers flying across the console. 1 burst transmission. That's all we have power for. Make it count. Sarah's message was simple and devastating. This is New Brisbane Colony. Coordinates attached. The Vax Collective attacked without warning or provocation. We are 300 civilians. We held them for 3 days. We gave them hell. Tell Earth, tell everyone. Avenge us. The message shot into space just as the doors burst open. Vax soldiers poured into the room, weapons raised. Marcus stood slowly, his hands empty but his eyes burning with defiance. He looked at each soldier, then at the officer in command. You won, Marcus said quietly, but you're going to wish you hadn't. The Vax officer didn't understand the statement. Not then. He simply ordered his troops to secure the survivors and begin salvage operations. Commander Zareth would be pleased. The mining colony was theirs, albeit at a higher cost than anticipated. But as the Vax soldiers searched the facility, they found something that made them deeply uncomfortable. Everywhere they looked, they saw evidence of human determination. Blood trails where wounded humans had crawled to their positions to keep fighting. Makeshift weapons crafted from mining tools. Messages scratched into walls saying things like, remember us and make them pay. One Vax soldier found a child's drawing in the residential section. It showed a family holding hands under a sun. The soldier stared at it for a long moment, then carefully folded it and put it in his pack. He didn't know why. He just felt that someone should remember. Sarah's message traveled through space at the speed of light, bouncing through relay stations and communication networks. It would take 6 weeks to reach Earth. 6 weeks before humanity learned that 300 of their own had been murdered by a species they had tried to establish peaceful relations with. 6 weeks before the galaxy learned what it meant to wake a sleeping giant. The message arrived at Earth Defense Command at 3 a.m, Greenwich Mean Time. Admiral Sarah Chen, no relation to the young woman who died at New Brisbane, was pulled from her bed by an urgent call. She arrived at the command center still buttoning her uniform jacket, her gray hair pulled back in a hasty bun. Show me, she said simply. The communications officer played the message, Sarah's voice young and determined, speaking words that would change everything. When it finished, the room was silent. Admiral Chen stood perfectly still, her face showing no emotion. Those who knew her well recognized this as her most dangerous state. Confirm authenticity, she said quietly. Already done, Admiral. It's genuine. We've also received visual confirmation from a passing cargo vessel. New Brisbane is occupied by Vax forces. Admiral Chen walked to the window overlooking Earth. The planet turned below, blue and white and beautiful. Humanity's cradle, their death world home that had tried to kill them for millions of years, and instead created something that refused to die. Contact the Security Council, she said. All of them. I don't care what time it is. We meet in 1 hour. The meeting was brief and unanimous. Earth's representative to the Galactic Council would file a formal complaint and demand immediate reparations. Privately, no one believed the complaint would matter. Humanity was too new to galactic politics. Too weak, too unimportant, they were right. The Galactic Council met 3 weeks later on the neutral station of Sanctuary 7. Earth's ambassador, a patient man named David Okonkwo, presented the evidence. The unprovoked attack, the civilian casualties, the violation of established territorial boundaries. The council listened with what appeared to be polite interest. Then the Vax representative, an ancient female named Shivrak, stood to respond. Her scales were pale with age, her voice strong despite her years. The territory in question was unclaimed before human arrival, she said smoothly. The Vax Collective has maintained mining rights in that sector for 3,000 years. We were simply reclaiming what was already ours. 300 people are dead, Ambassador Okonkwo said. His voice remained level, but his hands gripped the podium tightly. They were civilians, families, children. Unfortunate, Shivrax replied without emotion. But they were trespassing on our territory. They refused to leave peacefully. They were given no warning, no chance to evacuate. Your forces opened fire immediately. The council chambers buzzed with conversation. Several species shifted uncomfortably. Others seemed bored. The Galactic Council had existed for 50,000 years. They had seen countless conflicts between species. This was just another minor territorial dispute hardly worth their attention. The Council's decision was predictable. They would not intervene. The matter was between Earth and the Vax Collective to resolve diplomatically. Earth was advised to be more careful about establishing colonies in disputed territories in the future. Ambassador Okonkwo stood in the council chambers for a long moment after the decision was announced. Then he gathered his materials, walked to the podium, and spoke clearly so every species present would hear him. Earth accepts the council's decision. We will handle this matter ourselves. We hereby withdraw from all pending diplomatic negotiations and trade agreements until further notice. Thank you for your time. He left the chamber without waiting for a response. Behind him, the council members chattered among themselves. Some found humanity's wounded pride amusing. Others dismissed it as posturing. None of them understood what had just happened. Back on Earth, the response was already underway. Every shipyard in the Sol system went into overdrive. Military vessels that had been in various stages of construction were prioritized. Civilian ships were retrofitted with weapons. Mining colonies became fortress worlds overnight, their populations drilling for an attack that might never come. Mars, humanity's first successful colony, transformed its orbital shipyards into weapons factories. Titan's massive fuel refineries began producing military-grade propellant exclusively. The asteroid belt's mining operations shifted to extracting materials for armor plating and weapon systems. Admiral Chen coordinated the mobilization from Earth Defense Command. She slept 4 hours a night, lived on coffee and determination, and turned the entirety of human industrial capacity toward a single purpose: war. They think we're weak, she said during a meeting with the Joint Chiefs. They think we're soft because we're young. Because we prefer diplomacy. They're about to learn the difference between preferring peace and being incapable of war. The Admiral pulled up a holographic display showing Earth. The planet rotated slowly, its surface a mix of blue oceans, green continents, and white clouds. It looked peaceful, beautiful even. Our world is classified as a Class 12 death world, she continued. Most council species come from Class 1 or Class 2 worlds. Stable climates, predictable weather, gentle gravity. They don't understand what it takes to survive on Earth. She highlighted various regions: hurricanes that can level cities, earthquakes that split continents, volcanoes that can trigger global winters, deserts where the temperature swings from freezing to lethal in hours, jungles filled with creatures that evolved specifically to kill, oceans with predators the size of buildings. The other officers watched in silence. They knew all this, of course. They had grown up on Earth or Mars, which was nearly as harsh. But seeing it presented this way, as outsiders might see it, drove home just how extraordinary their survival had been. Every human alive is descended from survivors, Admiral Chen said quietly. We didn't conquer Earth, we endured it. We adapted to it. We became apex predators on a planet that tried to kill us every single day. And now the Vax Collective thinks we're easy prey. In the Vax Collective's territory, Commander Zareth received intelligence reports about human activities with growing confusion, massive fleet movements, industrial mobilization, military buildup across all human territories. It made no sense. The humans had lost. They should be negotiating, not preparing for war. Perhaps we should reinforce our border systems, his second officer suggested carefully. Zareth dismissed the concern. They're posturing, trying to save face after their humiliation at the council. Even if they attack, what can they do? We have 500 warships. They have perhaps 50 combat-capable vessels. The intelligence reports Zreth was reading were already 3 weeks old. In those 3 weeks, humanity had launched 200 new warships. In another 3 weeks, they would launch 300 more. Human shipyards operated around the clock. Their construction techniques refined over centuries of building in hostile environments. When humans built something, they built it to last. They built it to survive. They built it to win. Marcus Webb stood in a military recruiting station on Mars, his arm still in a sling from wounds sustained at New Brisbane. He was one of 17 survivors from the colony. The Vax had kept them prisoner for 2 weeks before releasing them as a gesture of goodwill. They had been returned to human space via neutral transport. Expecting to be greeted as victims, instead, Marcus found himself as a symbol. The man who held off an alien invasion for 3 days with only miners and mining equipment. The soldier who wasn't a soldier but fought like one anyway. "I want to volunteer," he told the recruiting officer. "Special operations. Boarding actions. Anywhere I can look them in the eyes when I kill them." The officer didn't try to talk him out of it. He simply processed the paperwork and marked Marcus for advanced combat training. Across human space, thousands were making the same decision. The Vax had awakened something in humanity that had been sleeping. Something primal. The same instinct that had driven their ancestors to hunt mammoth with stone-tipped spears, to cross oceans on wooden boats, to climb mountains simply because they were there. Humanity was going to war, and they were going to win because losing was not something humans did well. They were persistence hunters who chased prey for days until it collapsed from exhaustion. They were pack animals who worked together with terrifying efficiency. They were adaptable generalists who could survive in any environment. And most importantly, they were vengeful. Humanity remembered its dead, and humanity always collected its debts. The galaxy was about to receive an education in what Deathworlders could do when properly motivated. The lesson would be written in fire and blood across the stars, and the Vax Collective would be the unfortunate test case. The Vax border system of Kresh 4 was a minor military outpost, home to 300 soldiers and a small fleet of patrol vessels. Its commander, a middle-aged warrior named Kreth, was drinking his morning stimulant when the alarms began screaming. He rushed to the command center expecting pirates or smugglers. What he saw instead made his blood turn cold. Ships, hundreds of them, dropping out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation like a swarm of metal locusts. They were human ships, that much was clear from their design. Blocky, functional, covered in armor plating and weapons. They looked more like flying fortresses than proper warships. "Count," Kreth ordered, his voice surprisingly steady. 200 contacts, Commander." "No, 300. "They're still coming." 300? The humans don't have 300 warships." "They do now, sir." Kreth opened a communication channel. "Human vessels, this is Kresh 4 border station. You are entering Vax Collective space without authorization. State your intentions." The response was immediate. A human woman appeared on his screen, wearing the uniform of an Earth Defense Fleet admiral. Her face was composed, almost serene. Her eyes were absolutely merciless. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Fleet. You have 1 hour to evacuate all personnel from your station. After that, we will begin our assault. This is your only warning." "On whose authority?" "On the authority of 300 dead civilians at New Brisbane. You wanted our territory. Now you'll learn why no one else in the galaxy wanted it." "Chen out." The screen went dark. Kreth stared at it for a moment, then began ordering evacuation procedures. Some of his officers protested. They should fight. They should defend Vax honor. Kreth ignored them and kept issuing orders. He had seen something in Admiral Chen's eyes that terrified him more than any weapon. Certainty. The absolute knowledge that she would do exactly what she promised. 53 minutes later, the last Vax shuttle cleared the station. 7 minutes after that, the station ceased to exist. Human warships pounded it with missiles, kinetic rounds, and energy weapons until nothing remained but debris. They didn't stop shooting until the station's reactor detonated in a brief, brilliant star. Admiral Chen watched from the bridge of her flagship, the EDS Vengeance. The name was not subtle. Neither was humanity's strategy. All ships proceed to next target. Kresh 7 mining facility. Same protocol. 1 hour warning, then we level it. Her tactical officer hesitated. "Admiral, these are civilian targets." "No," Chen replied coldly. These are strategic assets. Every facility we destroy is one less resource for their war machine, and we give them time to evacuate because we're not murderers. But make no mistake, Lieutenant, we are here to break the Vax Collective's ability to wage war. Every station, every military installation, every shipyard. We burn it all. The human fleet moved through Vax space like a plague. They hit 6 systems in the first week, 12 in the second. Their strategy was brutal in its simplicity. Warn, evacuate, destroy. They gave the Vax time to flee, because humanity still believed in minimizing casualties. But they showed no mercy to infrastructure. The Vax military scrambled to respond. Fleet Admiral Croth assembled a battle group of 100 warships and moved to intercept the humans at the Devash system. It should have been a decisive victory. The humans were outnumbered and the Vax had superior firepower per vessel. But humans didn't fight fair. They fought to win. The battle began with the humans releasing thousands of small drones. The Vax sensors were overwhelmed by targets. Half were decoys, broadcasting false signatures. A quarter were packed with explosives programmed to crash into Vax ships. The final quarter carried electronic warfare packages that scrambled communications and targeting systems. "What is this?" Croth demanded. "This isn't warfare. This is chaos." His tactical officer was too busy trying to organize their defense to respond. The Vax fleet's carefully planned formations broke apart as ships maneuvered to avoid the swarm of drones. And while they were distracted, the human warships moved in. Human vessels weren't as graceful as Vax ships. They were slower, bulkier, but they were tough. Vax weapons that should have pierced their hulls barely scratched their armor. The humans had over-engineered everything, building ships that could survive in the harsh environments of their own solar system. Now that excessive durability was paying off. "Target their engines," Croth ordered. "Disable and capture." But the humans had no intention of being captured. When a human ship was critically damaged, its crew didn't surrender. They accelerated straight at the nearest Vax vessel and detonated their reactor. 6 Vax ships were destroyed by suicide runs before Croth ordered his fleet to keep their distance. "They're insane," someone whispered. "No," Croth said quietly. "They're determined. There's a difference. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, the Vax had lost 73 ships. The humans lost 42. In any other context, both sides would have withdrawn to regroup. But the humans didn't withdraw. They kept coming. Marcus Webb was part of the first wave of human boarding parties to hit a Vax space station. His team of 12 moved through the corridors in practiced formation, their combat armor sealed against vacuum. They had trained for 3 months. The Vax had thousands of years of military tradition. It didn't matter. The Vax were used to fighting other species that followed rules, that surrendered when defeat was inevitable, that valued their own lives above victory. Humans were different. Marcus's team encountered a Vax squad in a narrow corridor. The aliens opened fire with plasma rifles, cutting down 2 humans immediately. The rest didn't retreat. They charged forward into the fire, returning shots with their kinetic rifles. One human took 3 plasma bolts to the chest and kept moving long enough to detonate a grenade that killed 4 Vax soldiers. Marcus found himself face to face with a Vax warrior, their weapons locked together. The alien was stronger, pushing him back. But Marcus had spent his entire life fighting gravity that would crush most galactic species. He twisted, used the alien's strength against him, and drove his combat knife up through a gap in the armor plating. The Vax soldier collapsed. Marcus stepped over the body and kept moving. Behind him, his team followed. They were human. They didn't stop. Across the galaxy, reports flooded into the Galactic Council. The humans weren't just fighting. They were winning. And the way they fought terrified everyone who saw the footage. Species that had dismissed humans as weak newcomers watched combat recordings and saw the truth. Humans who continued fighting with broken bones. Humans who used their own ships as weapons. Humans who showed no fear of death if death meant victory. Humans who worked together with a coordination that suggested a hive mind but was really just the result of millions of years of evolution as pack. Hunter's one recording in particular went viral across the galactic networks. A Vax commander was interrogating a captured human soldier, demanding to know why humans wouldn't surrender even when facing certain death. The human, a young woman with a bandage covering half her face, smiled at the camera. "Because you killed our people. Because you thought we were weak." Because you need to learn that humans don't forgive. We don't forget, and we sure as hell don't surrender. You wanted a fight? Congratulations. You got one. The recording ended. The woman had been rescued 3 days later when human forces overran the prison facility. She returned to active duty within a week. Commander Zreth watched the recordings from his flagship, his scales pale with stress. The easy conquest he had promised his superiors had turned into a nightmare. The humans were pressing deep into Vax territory now, and nothing was stopping them. We should negotiate, his second officer said quietly. Sue for peace before they reach the core worlds? And admit defeat to a species we've been at war with for less than 3 months? The Council would never accept such humiliation. The Council doesn't have to fight them. We do. And I'm telling you, Commander, these humans don't fight like anyone we've ever faced. They fight like cornered predators, like they have nothing to lose. Zreth knew his officer was right. The humans were coming, and they weren't going to stop until they had their revenge. He had started this war thinking humanity was weak. Now he was watching his entire military crumble before an enemy that simply refused to quit. On the bridge of the Vengeance, Admiral Chen reviewed casualty reports. Every death hurt. Every name on the list was a person she had sent into battle. But she didn't stop. Couldn't stop. Not until the Vax Collective understood that attacking humanity carried a price they couldn't afford to pay. Navigation, set course for Vax Prime, she ordered. It's time to end this. The human fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Vax Prime system, like a steel wall materializing from nothing. 500 warships. Every vessel humanity could spare, armed with weapons and crewed by soldiers who had spent 3 months learning to hate. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the Vengeance and looked at the blue-green world that served as the Vax Collective's homeworld. Billions lived on that planet, families, children, people who had nothing to do with the attack on New Brisbane. She felt the weight of what she was about to do settle on her shoulders like a physical burden. Admiral, receiving communication from Vax High Command, her communications officer reported. A Vax appeared on screen. She was ancient, her scales faded to almost white. Chen recognized her from the Galactic Council proceedings. Shivrax, the diplomat who had dismissed human deaths as unfortunate but acceptable. Admiral Chen, Shivrax said, her voice steady despite the fleet of human warships pointed at her homeworld. We wish to discuss terms of peace. Now you want to talk, Chen replied. Her voice was flat, emotionless. After we've destroyed 40% of your military infrastructure. After we fought our way through half your territory. Now you want peace. We underestimated humanity's military capacity. We acknowledge this error. What are your terms? Chen pulled up a datapad. Unconditional surrender of all forces. Complete reparations for damages at New Brisbane, including compensation for every single person who died. Full territorial recognition of all human claims, and Commander Zreth delivered to human custody for trial. Shivrax's scales rippled, a sign of distress. These terms are harsh. The Collective Council will never. I don't care what your council will accept, Chen interrupted. These are the terms. You have 24 hours to comply. If you refuse, we will begin orbital bombardment of military targets. Every weapons factory, every shipyard, every military base on your planet. We will give civilians time to evacuate each target, because unlike you, we don't murder innocent people. But we will turn your military capacity to ash. You cannot threaten our homeworld. The Galactic Council had their chance to intervene. They chose not to. This is between us and you now. 24 hours, Chen cut the connection. Around her, the bridge crew waited in silence. They all knew what those orders meant. Orbital bombardment of a populated planet. Even with warnings, even targeting only military sites, civilians would die. It went against everything humanity claimed to stand for. Admiral, her executive officer said quietly, are we really going to do this? Chen was silent for a long moment. If they refuse our terms? Yes. Because if we back down now, every species in the galaxy will know that humanity makes empty threats. They'll know we can be pushed. And in 10 years, 20 years, someone else will attack our colonies thinking we won't have the stomach to respond. This ends here. We show the galaxy that humanity keeps its promises, no matter how terrible. The message went out across the galactic networks. Humanity had cornered the Vax Collective and was demanding surrender. News organizations from 100 species broadcast the standoff. Some commentators praised human restraint in offering terms. Others condemned the threat of orbital bombardment as barbaric. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session. Ambassador Okonkwo stood before them once more, his expression neutral. The Council demands that Earth withdraw its fleet immediately, the Council speaker announced. This level of aggression is unacceptable among civilized species. With respect, Okonkwo replied, humanity requested Council intervention 3 months ago. You refused. You declared this a bilateral matter. Now you object when we handle it bilaterally. You can't have it both ways. Your fleet is threatening billions of lives. The Vax Collective killed 300 of our people without warning or mercy. They dismissed it as acceptable losses. Now they face consequences, and suddenly the Council cares about life. Interesting timing. The Council chamber erupted in argument. Some species supported humanity's position. Others condemned it. Several quietly began recalculating their diplomatic positions, realizing that humanity was not the weak newcomer they had assumed. On Vax Prime, the Collective Council met in crisis. Reports flooded in from their military. The human fleet wasn't bluffing. Their weapons were locked on targets. Their ships were in bombardment positions. All they needed was Admiral Chen's order. We should fight, one council member declared. We still have 300 warships in system. And the humans have 500, another replied, including the fleet that destroyed 70 of our best ships at Devash. The mathematics are not favorable. Shivrax listened to the arguments with growing frustration. She had miscalculated badly. She had assumed humans were like most young species, eager to prove themselves but ultimately cautious, willing to accept diplomatic solutions even after being wronged. She had not anticipated this level of sustained fury. What choice do we have? She said finally. We can fight and watch our homeworld burn, or we can accept their terms. The terms include surrendering Zreth. He is a war hero, a noble commander. He is the fool who started this war. Let him face the consequences of his actions. The vote was close. In the end, survival won over pride. The Vax Collective transmitted their acceptance of terms 18 hours after Chen's ultimatum. The relief on the Vengeance's bridge was palpable. No one had wanted to bombard a populated planet. Commander Zreth was delivered to human custody 3 days later. He stood in shackles on the bridge of the Vengeance, surrounded by human soldiers. Admiral Chen studied him for a long moment. Do you understand what you did? She asked quietly. Zreth's scales had lost their luster. He looked diminished, defeated. I attacked a mining colony, a simple military operation. You murdered 300 people. You started a war that cost thousands of lives on both sides. You destroyed billions of credits worth of infrastructure. And for what? A handful of asteroids? I was following orders, acting in the interest of the Collective. Then the Collective will learn the cost of those interests. Zreth was taken away. He would face trial on Earth, in full view of the galactic media. Humanity would show the galaxy that they believed in justice, not just revenge. But they would also make sure everyone understood the price of attacking human civilians. Marcus Webb stood in the courtroom when Zreth's trial began. He was in his dress uniform, his scars visible on his face and hands. When called to testify, he walked to the stand calmly and told his story. The 3 days of fighting. The friends who died. The way the Vax forces had shown no mercy. Why did you keep fighting? The prosecutor asked. You were civilians, outnumbered and outgunned. Why not surrender? Marcus looked directly at Zreth. Because if we didn't make it hurt, they'd do it again. To someone else. Some other colony. We fought so the next humans wouldn't have to. We bought time with our lives so Earth would know what happened. So humanity would respond. And did humanity respond appropriately? Humanity responded exactly as we hoped. They made sure the Vax Collective regretted ever hearing the name New Brisbane. The trial lasted 2 weeks. The evidence was overwhelming. Zreth was found guilty of war crimes and sentenced to life imprisonment. The sentence was lenient compared to what many humans wanted, but it sent a message. Humanity would punish those who wronged them, but they would do it through law, not lynch mobs. The reparations began flowing to New Brisbane's survivors and victims' families. The Vax Collective's military was reduced to a defense-only force, their expansion ambitions crushed. And across the galaxy, species began to truly understand what humanity represented. Admiral Chen retired 6 months after the war ended. She had accomplished her mission, but at a cost that showed on her face. She looked older, wearier, She had sent thousands to their deaths and threatened billions more. The victory felt hollow. At her retirement ceremony, Marcus Webb was in attendance. After the formal proceedings, he approached her privately. "Admiral," he said quietly, "thank you for everything." Chen looked at him, this young man who had survived hell and volunteered to return to it. "I should be thanking you. You and everyone at New Brisbane. You held long enough for us to respond. You showed the galaxy what humans are capable of. We showed them what they made us do." Marcus corrected. "We didn't want war. We wanted to mine asteroids and build lives. They forced this." "They did," Chen agreed. "And now they'll never forget it." "None of them will." News of the war spread throughout the galaxy. Every species received the same message, implicit but clear. Humanity preferred peace. Humanity valued diplomacy. But humanity would not accept being victims. They came from a world that had tried to kill them for millions of years. And they had survived by being too stubborn to die. The Vax Collective's mistake had been thinking that because humans were young, they were weak. They learned the truth the hard way. Age meant nothing. Experience meant nothing. What mattered was determination, adaptability, and the willingness to do whatever necessary to survive. Humanity had earned their title. The Deathworlders had proven they belonged among the stars. Not as victims, not as prey, but as apex predators who chose to be civilized right up until civilization failed them. 1 year after the war ended, Marcus Webb stood on the observation deck of New Brisbane Station and watched ships arrive. The colony had been rebuilt, bigger and better than before. The new station combined mining operations with a significant military presence. No one would catch New Brisbane undefended again. Behind him, construction crews put finishing touches on the memorial wall. 300 names carved into a sheet of pure titanium mined from these very asteroids. Each name had a small holographic display showing the person's face and a brief story of their life. They weren't just casualties. They were people, friends, family, human beings who deserved to be remembered. "It looks good," a voice said. Marcus turned to see Sarah Chen, former admiral now serving as Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Council. She had come for the memorial dedication ceremony. "It's not enough," Marcus replied. "Nothing will ever be enough." "No," Chen agreed. "But it's what we have. Their names. Their stories. The promise that we'll never forget." The dedication ceremony drew representatives from 40 species. Most came out of diplomatic obligation. Some came out of genuine respect. All of them came because refusing an invitation from humanity was no longer politically wise. Ambassador Okonkwo gave the main speech. He spoke about loss and memory, about justice and peace. He spoke about the 300 who died and the thousands who avenged them. He spoke about humanity's hope that such a war would never be necessary again. "But make no mistake," he concluded, looking directly at the assembled alien diplomats. "If it becomes necessary, humanity will respond. We are not conquerors. We are not warmongers. But we are survivors, and we protect our own. Remember New Brisbane. Remember what happens when you mistake our desire for peace as weakness." The ceremony ended with a moment of silence. 300 seconds, one for each victim. In the silence, several alien diplomats shifted uncomfortably. They were thinking about their own military assessments of humanity, wondering if their species had ever made similar assumptions, hoping they never had to find out if humanity's reputation was deserved. The Galactic Council had undergone significant changes since the war. Humanity now held a permanent seat on the Security Council, granted not out of respect but out of fear. Species that had dismissed human diplomatic initiatives now competed for trade agreements and defense pacts. Humanity's military had proven itself capable, and in a galaxy where strength mattered, that changed everything. Ambassador Okonkwo sat in the council chambers and listened to a dispute between two minor species over territorial rights. It was the kind of petty argument that had been going on for decades. But now, when tensions rose and threats were implied, both sides glanced at the human delegation nervously. "Perhaps Earth could mediate," one species suggested. Okonkwo considered. A year ago, such a request would have been unthinkable. Humanity was too new, too inexperienced. Now they were being asked to mediate because both sides knew that humanity's judgment came with an implicit threat. "Agree to reasonable terms or risk humanity deciding you're the aggressor. We would be honored to assist," Okonkwo replied diplomatically. The mediation took 3 days. Both sides made concessions they would never have considered before. The dispute was resolved peacefully, and humanity added another success to its diplomatic record, building a reputation not just as warriors but as fair arbiters. On Earth, life had returned to a strange new normal. The shipyard still operated at high capacity, but now they built civilian vessels alongside military ones. The military remained on heightened alert, but training had shifted from pure warfare to peacekeeping operations. Humanity was learning to balance its newfound power with its original ideals. Marcus Webb had left active military service and returned to mining operations. But he also served as an instructor at the military academy, teaching new soldiers about the reality of combat. His classes were brutally honest. He didn't glorify war. He didn't make it seem heroic or exciting. He showed them what it actually was, terrifying, exhausting, and heartbreaking. Everyone who goes into combat thinks they know what it'll be like, he told a class of fresh recruits. Then the shooting starts and you realize you don't know anything. You're scared. Your friends are dying. Everything is chaos. And in that moment you have a choice. You can freeze or you can move forward. The only difference between cowards and heroes is that heroes move forward even when they're terrified. After class, a young woman approached him. She was barely 18, fresh from basic training. "Sir, why did you volunteer to come back after New Brisbane?" "You survived. You could have stayed safe." Marcus was quiet for a moment. "Because 300 people died buying time for Earth to respond. I survived, which meant I had a debt to pay. I owed it to them to make their sacrifice mean something." "Did it mean something?" "We won the war. The Vax Collective will never threaten human colonies again, and the galaxy learned that humanity isn't prey. Yeah, it meant something, but it cost too much. That's the truth about war. Even when you win, you lose." Across the galaxy, humanity's reputation solidified. They were known as fair traders but fierce warriors, diplomatic but dangerous, a species that would give you every chance to resolve things peacefully. But once that line was crossed, they became something primal and unstoppable. The Vax Collective slowly rebuilt, but they were changed. Their expansion ambitions were gone, replaced by cautious defensive policies. Commander Zreth's name became synonymous with foolish arrogance in their culture. Parents told children cautionary tales about the commander who thought humans were weak. In a secure facility on Earth, Zreth himself lived out his sentence. He was treated humanely, given adequate quarters and fair treatment. It was more mercy than he had shown New Brisbane, and the irony wasn't lost on him. Sometimes at night he still saw the faces of those human miners, the way they had looked at him with such hatred and determination. He had started a war thinking he was punishing trespassers. He had learned he was awakening predators. New species continued to make first contact with humanity. Each time the same question arose during the diplomatic briefings. What kind of world do they come from? The answer was always the same. Earth. A Class 12 death world where the dominant species had evolved as persistence hunters on a planet that tried to kill them constantly, where the gravity was crushing to most species, where the weather was violent and unpredictable, where predators evolved to be efficient killers and prey evolved to be equally dangerous. One first contact was particularly memorable. The Zenth were a peaceful species from a quiet, stable world. Their diplomat was visibly nervous during the initial meeting with human representatives. "We have heard stories," the Zenth said carefully, "about the war with the Vax, about human warriors who don't surrender. Is this true?" Ambassador Okonkwo smiled gently. "We prefer not to fight at all. Humanity values peace and cooperation. We want to trade with you, learn from you, share culture and knowledge. But if there is conflict, then we will exhaust every diplomatic option first. We'll negotiate in good faith and make reasonable compromises. We'll give you every possible chance to resolve things peacefully." The Zenth diplomat relaxed slightly. "That is good to hear." "But," Okonkwo continued, his voice still gentle but his eyes hard, "if you attack our people without cause, if you hurt our civilians, if you mistake our patience for weakness, then you'll learn why no other species in the galaxy wanted to colonize our world. You'll learn what it means to fight something that evolved on a planet where everything tried to kill it. You'll learn that we're friendly, right up until you give us reason not to be." The Zenth diplomat swallowed nervously. "We will remember this." "Good. Now shall we discuss trade agreements? I believe your people manufacture excellent scientific instruments, and we're very interested in establishing a partnership." The diplomatic dance continued. Humanity built alliances and trade networks. They shared technology and cultural exchanges. They became respected members of galactic civilization. But always in the background was the memory of New Brisbane and the war that followed. Children on Earth grew up learning about the colony that was lost and the response that followed. It became part of human history, taught alongside other moments when humanity faced extinction and chose to fight instead. It was a reminder of what they were capable of when pushed too far. Marcus Webb attended the 10th anniversary memorial at New Brisbane. The colony was thriving now, home to 5,000 people. The memorial wall had become a sacred place, visited by tourists and pilgrims from across human space. People came to remember, to honor, to understand, and elderly Vax was among the visitors. She walked slowly to the memorial wall. Her scales faded with age. Marcus recognized her. Shivrax, the diplomat who had dismissed human casualties as acceptable losses. They were people, Shivrax said quietly, not looking at Marcus. I saw them as numbers, as obstacles. I didn't understand. And now? Marcus asked. Now I teach young Vax about the importance of respecting all species, about the danger of underestimating others, about the price of arrogance. She turned to face him. I cannot undo what happened, cannot bring back the dead, but I can ensure our people remember, that they learn. Marcus nodded slowly. That's more than most would do.